The sun dipped low behind the jagged cliffs of Devil's Ridge as we reached the summit, unaware that this was no ordinary peak. The legends were mere whispers to us, then stories of strange disappearances, of those who wandered too far and never returned. But as dark clouds rolled in and the winds picked up, I felt it, the unsettling sense that we were no longer alone. My friends and I had set out early that morning, laughter and excitement driving us forward. The thrill of conquering a mountain like Devil's Ridge was intoxicating. We shared stories of past adventures, of hikes that tested our limits, yet nothing could prepare us for the eerie atmosphere that enveloped us as we neared the summit. It started subtly, a chill that ran through the air, making the hair on the back of my neck stand on end. As we huddled together, catching our breath, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us from the shadows. I brushed it off, blaming the encroaching storm for my growing unease. As the clouds thickened and darkness began to cloak the ridge, the wind picked up, howling around us like a wild beast. We found shelter in a rocky outcrop, trying to wait out the worst of the storm. Thunder rumbled in the distance, each clap sending a jolt of fear through me, a reminder that nature was not on our side. With nightfall, the world transformed. The once familiar path became an unfathomable maze of shadows, the towering rock formations looming over us like ancient sentinels. I glanced at my friends, their faces pale under the flickering light of our lantern. The atmosphere thickened with tension, our bravado fading into quiet fear. We began to hear it then, a low rumbling sound that reverberated through the rocks. It was unlike anything I had ever encountered, a guttural noise that made my heart race. "Just the wind," someone muttered, but the uncertainty in their voice betrayed their bravado. I wished I could believe it too. As the storm unleashed its fury, we huddled closer, straining to hear over the howling winds. The noise persisted, growing louder, mingling with the thunder. It felt like it was coming from deep within the ridge, as if something beneath the earth had awakened. I exchanged glances with my friends, their eyes reflecting the fear that we all felt but dared not voice. Suddenly, one of our group, Jake, stood up, his face pale. "I saw something," he said, his voice trembling. "Out there in the trees." We all turned to look, but the darkness was impenetrable, swallowing any light our lanterns could offer. Doubts crept in. Was this fear or mere paranoia feeding our imaginations? The wind whipped around us, sending a shiver down my spine. "We need to move," I suggested, though the thought of leaving our makeshift shelter terrified me. "Find a way down before the storm gets worse." My voice was firm, but inside, I felt the walls closing in, the shadows pressing against us with malevolent intent. We hesitated, but the growing urgency in my tone spurred us into action. We gathered our gear and stepped into the darkness, lanterns flickering as we moved forward. Each step felt heavy, as if the mountain itself was reluctant to let us go. My instincts screamed for us to turn back, but we pressed on, searching for an escape. With every passing moment, the atmosphere grew heavier, charged with an inexplicable dread. I glanced back at the ridge we had just ascended, feeling as though something had shifted in the shadows behind us. "We should stick together," I said, my voice strained. But the group's tension was palpable, and I could sense the cracks beginning to form. As we trekked down the winding path, the wind seemed to whisper our names, twisting through the trees like an ancient chant. "Can you hear that?" Sarah asked, her eyes wide with fear. I nodded, the sound unsettling, as if the ridge itself was alive, an entity aware of our presence, hungry for our fear. Moments turned into hours, and the storm showed no signs of relenting. The rain poured down, soaking us to the bone, and I could feel despair creeping in, sapping our resolve. I glanced at my friends, their expressions betraying the panic that lay just beneath the surface. Each heartbeat echoed the growing fear that we might not make it out alive. Suddenly, we heard a scream, piercing through the chaos of the storm. It was Jake. I turned just in time to see him disappear into the shadows, swallowed by the darkness. "Jake!" I yelled, my voice lost to the wind. I wanted to run after him, but a primal fear rooted me in place, paralyzing my every instinct. The others were panicking now, calling out for Jake, but deep down, I felt an icy grip around my heart. Something was wrong. It was as if the mountain itself was conspiring against us, pulling us apart one by one. I grabbed the nearest person, Sarah, urgently. "We need to stick together," I shouted, trying to hold on to the fraying threads of our sanity. We turned back, searching for any sign of Jake. But the darkness was absolute. The rain poured harder, obscuring our vision and drowning out any sounds. The chilling realization set in. We were utterly alone on this ridge, and whatever had taken Jake was now hunting us. As we stumbled through the storm, the wind seemed to carry whispers, strange murmurs that sent shivers racing down my spine. "This is a bad idea," one of my friends murmured, fear etched across their face. I felt it too, the desperation, the sense that we had walked into a trap we couldn't escape. I tried to keep everyone focused, but with every passing moment, the shadows felt closer, more tangible. I could hear my own heart pounding in my chest, drowning out the sound of the storm. The shadows danced at the edge of my vision, taunting me, and I felt the suffocating weight of despair settle upon us. We pressed on, calling Jake's name, but there was only silence in response. Each echo of our voices seemed to mock us, reminding us of our growing isolation. I could feel the weight of the ridge pressing down, squeezing the air from my lungs as panic threatened to consume me. Then, I caught sight of something, a flicker of movement in the corner of my eye. I turned, heart racing, only to find nothing but darkness. But the sensation was unmistakable. We were being watched. "We have to keep moving," I urged, but I could see the fear in my friend's eyes. With heavy hearts, we continued down the slope, but the atmosphere had shifted. The air crackled with tension, and I felt as though the very ground beneath us was alive, pulsating with an ancient energy. It was a sense of foreboding, a warning that we were trespassing where we didn't belong. Then it happened again. Another scream, this time from behind us. It was a gut-wrenching sound filled with terror. That sounded like someone started, but the words hung in the air, unspoken. We turned, faces pale, searching the darkness, but the shadows remained indifferent, swallowing the light. "We can't stay here!" I yelled, panic surging through me. We stumbled forward, adrenaline fueling our movements. I could feel the weight of despair pressing down, every second stretching into an eternity as we pushed deeper into the darkness. It was a race against time, but we had no idea what we were racing against. The storm intensified, the wind howling like a banshee, and I felt the panic swell within me. "What if we're already too late?" I whispered, the words barely escaping my lips. My mind raced with thoughts of my friends, of what might be lurking just beyond our sight. The shadows loomed larger, threatening to swallow us whole. We finally reached a clearing, but the relief was short-lived. The ground was slick with mud, and the rain pounded down like a relentless drumbeat. I looked at my friends, their faces etched with fear. "We have to find a way off this ridge," I urged, but uncertainty hung heavy in the air. I felt it again, the sensation of being watched. My skin prickled with dread, and I could see the same fear mirrored in my friends' eyes. "We need to split up," I suggested, knowing it was a terrible idea. But desperation clouded my judgment. "We'll cover more ground." They hesitated, but the need for survival pushed us apart. As I ventured alone into the dark, I could feel the shadows pressing closer, their icy fingers reaching out. Each step felt like a betrayal, pulling me away from the safety of my friends. I called out to them, but my voice was swallowed by the storm, leaving only silence in its wake. I stumbled through the darkness, the weight of despair dragging me down. With every breath, the air grew heavier, suffocating me. The wind shrieked in my ears, drowning out my thoughts, leaving only the primal instinct to survive. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was stalking me, waiting for the right moment to strike. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of movement shadows flitting between the trees, shapes that seemed to dance just beyond my reach. I stopped, heart pounding, straining to see what lay hidden in the darkness. My instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs felt like lead, frozen in place by fear. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the night as a branch broke behind me. I whipped around, heart racing, but there was nothing, only the relentless storm and the oppressive darkness. My breath came in shallow gasps, and I felt the chill of terror creep deeper into my bones. I turned to run back to my friends, but the shadows seemed to shift, blocking my path. "This isn't real," I whispered, trying to convince myself. But the tightening grip of dread around my heart told me otherwise. Whatever lurked in the shadows was no figment of my imagination. It was very much alive. I stumbled into a clearing and let out a ragged breath. The wind howled around me, drowning out any other sounds. I searched desperately for any sign of my friends, but the darkness felt suffocating. "Please," I pleaded into the void, "just let us go." The wind answered with a chilling silence. Then I heard it, a low, menacing growl that sent ice coursing through my veins. It came from the shadows, a sound that seemed to vibrate through the very ground beneath me. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I felt frozen, caught in the grip of primal fear. The darkness around me pulsed, alive with an unseen force that seemed to reach for me. I turned to flee, but the shadows morphed, stretching and contorting as if trying to trap me. I ran blindly, heart racing, the howling wind echoing my terror as I dashed through the trees. I burst into another clearing, gasping for breath, but I was still alone. The storm raged on, battering me with cold rain and wind, but I felt the overwhelming weight of despair settle around me. My friends were gone, and the realization clawed at my mind like a wild animal. I called out their names, desperation fueling my voice, but there was no response. Only the wind carried the sound away, leaving me alone with my thoughts. The shadows seemed to close in around me, their presence suffocating, filling the air with an oppressive sense of dread. I stumbled, fatigue dragging me down, and my hands pressed against the damp ground. I felt like I was losing myself in the darkness, my sense of direction slipping away. Just as I thought I might be consumed by despair, I spotted a flicker of light in the distant hope, however faint. I forced myself to move toward it, the storm raging on, pushing me back with every step. But I pressed on, my heart pounding, driven by the desire to find my friends, to escape the grip of Devil's Ridge. As I drew closer, the light flickered and danced, teasing me with the promise of safety. Yet, as I neared the light, a chilling realization washed over me. The storm subsided for a moment, and in the eerie silence I felt it, a presence behind me, watching, waiting. I turned, terror gripping my heart, knowing that whatever had taken my friends was now here, in the shadows, hungry for me. I stood at the edge of the ridge, the last one left, staring into the abyss below as the storm raged around me. Whatever had taken my friends was still out there, lurking in the shadows. The howling wind carried their screams, echoing across the cliffs, as I realized there was no escape from Devil's Ridge.